Hey everybody, let's talk about my latest music playlist. It's called Winter 2025. I'm well aware that we're in 2026, but I made this playlist a couple months ago and it was too close to the holidays, and I thought everyone's listening to Christmas music right now. Let me give it a break for a bit and then release it in January or February, and so here we are. I've been making these playlists for a couple of years now, once a quarter, and this I think is my third video talking about the songs themselves. I'll leave links to the music itself down below. This is just going to be a background to each of the songs and why I chose them and the artist and why I like them. The first song is called Juice by a band called Slothrust. These guys are originally out of Boston, but I think now they live in Los Angeles. The album that I took this track from is about 10 years old at this point. It's their second album, and I think they've made about 5 at this point. This is a great opening track because it starts out slow and kind of gets into it, and one of my favorite things about this album in particular is that it feels very 90s alternative rock, which was very formative to me back in the day when I grew up in the Seattle area around that same time period. So I love the homage to that time period in particular, and this album in particular is full of it. It's called Of Course You Do. It came out around 2014. Now, they've released a few albums since then, and those have a more modern sound to them. I don't care for them as much as this album in particular, so I highly recommend this one if you like this song, which I think is a great starter song. The theme of this particular playlist is going to be mid-tempo songs that are a little bit catchy and somewhat energetic, and that was just what I was going for at the time when I was making this playlist. Usually I will travel in the wintertime, and I'm not here in Hawaii, but this time in particular, in 2025, I only made one quick trip in December, but otherwise I was here the whole time, which means that I was getting a lot of sun and experiencing a winter that most people do not. And so I wanted to kind of capture that kind of energetic feeling that I was getting in December at that time. And so this is the first track in that, where it's a bit more energetic and not quite as reflective as my typical winter playlists. The second song moves right into that theme. It's called Fire Island, Arkansas, and it's from a band called Long Winters, which is a Seattle-based band, one of my all-time favorites. There's a cool story about this band. So John Roderick, who is the singer of the Long Winters, was also the touring keyboardist for Harvey Danger, another 90s alternative rock band from Seattle. And so he got to know Sean Nelson, the singer of Harvey Danger, pretty well. And as the Long Winters started forming, Sean Nelson was part of it, and he played keyboards for them. And so it was just kind of funny that he played keyboards for this one band, but then their singer became the keyboardist for his own band. And they just kind of went on from there. Many different cycling musicians over the years, but the song that we're listening to here is from their last album. It's called Putting the Days to Bed. This album came out about 20 years ago. It was their last major recording, but I love it. This type of music is called power pop, so it's known for being a bit aggressive, but then also very catchy. Bands like Weezer are also classified as this. What I love about this song is the slightly riffy guitar track to it that just kind of carries everything together, and it gets very sing-alongy by the end. And so again, kind of going towards that more upbeat and mid-tempo cycle that I was going with this playlist, it was a perfect fit. Now for the next track, I wanted to slow it down a little bit, so I picked a track called Fangela by a band called Here We Go Magic. Now, this is the third album from a guy named Luke Temple. He's got a couple other monikers that he's used over the years, but one of my favorite singer-songwriters. This album in particular came out about 18 years ago today, so this is a bit of an older track, but I love the fact that it's a bit psychedelic, a little bit jazzy, but also has a nice mid-tempo feel to it too, while still being fairly relaxed. What I like about Luke Temple and all of the projects that he's done is that he's very experimental and he tries out new things with every song, and so you never really know what to expect when you hit play, and I love that idea. And he always makes it very listenable at the same time. He's also got this nice falsetto voice that brings everything together, kind of reminds me a bit of Jeff Buckley, and so yeah, I would recommend anything from Luke Temple and Here We Go Magic, but this is one of my favorite tracks. So at this point we're on track 4, and I wanted to go back to the theme of this playlist, which is catchy and mid-tempo and a little bit energetic. And I think a great addition to that is this song, which is called In Beats Like Trains by Sunday's Best. These guys were an emo rock band from the late 90s and early 2000s, and one of my favorites. I actually caught them back around 1998 or 1999 when they opened up for Page of the Lion in Seattle. Long story, but I was going to prom that night, and we decided instead of going to prom, me and a group of friends, we were going to go to this concert instead. I think we still showed up at the prom. I can't really remember at this point, but it was really kind of neat to have this special occasion where we went up and had a nice dinner and then watched Page of the Lion and, of course, Sunday's Best open up for them. Now, this band has a lot of connection with other bands, both before and after. Like their drummer used to be the singer of a band called Skip Loader, which was a band out of Portland that was really great. And then also the guitarist of Sunday's Best went on to to form a band called the Jealous Sound with the singer of Knapsack, which is also like a really big band in the mid-2000s. And then finally, the singer and other guitar player went on and formed another band called the Little Ones that had their own share of success. In fact, they were featured on that kids show Yo Gabba Gabba back in the day too. So these each have kind of gone in different directions, but as far as I know, none of them are actually making much music anymore. Regardless, I find that this album from Sunday's Best is one of the best that any of these guys have ever made. It just all came together really nicely. The album is called Poised to Break. It came out in 2000, and this song is called In Beats Like Trains. It's really catchy, a really nice guitar riff to it as well, very similar to some of the other songs that we have shown already on this playlist. So the vibe I'm going at this point in the playlist is to really kind of bring it back up and remind you what this playlist is all about, something that's catchy, mid-tempo, and very guitar-driven. Of course, I'm a guy who gets bored very easily, and so I completely switched it up for song number 5. This is a song called Marie by Randy Newman. It was written in the mid-70s, so a much older classic. Randy Newman is a legendary singer-songwriter. He has made so many classics over the years. I Love LA is one of his most famous songs. He also did that Toy Story song, You Got a Friend in Me. What I love about this song is that it is timeless. It is 50 years old as of making this playlist, but it still sounds very fresh and new. It's just Randy playing on the piano and singing, a little bit of orchestration behind him, and that's about it. But what I love about this is it's a nice reminder that sometimes human emotion conveyed in song is something that doesn't really matter in terms of genre as well as time that it was written or recorded. Sometimes it just all comes together nicely. Now, I had heard this song a few times over the years, but they were covers from other bands, including one that just came out last year from a band called Cataldo, where I was like, I know this song, but I think it's a cover. And so I looked it up, and sure enough, it was written by Randy Newman. I wasn't expecting that. And so I put it in here as a reminder to myself to always, check out other songs, but then also just as an introduction in case you hadn't heard the original, which I think is a classic. Now, I think that once you introduce a slow song into a playlist, you need to transition to basically get up to a higher energy level. And so this next song is my transitional song. It is called Capturing Moods by Rilo Kiley. This is a Los Angeles-based band that was pretty big in the early 2000s, around the same time as a lot of the other bands on this playlist. The singer, Jenny Lewis, was also the backup singer for the Postal Service, so she recorded that album with them and also went on tour later on and whatnot too. The reason why I picked this song for the playlist is because it's a transitional song, like I mentioned, so it starts out slow and kind of gets more energetic near the end, but it's also very uplifting, both in the lyrics and then just the music itself. It just keeps building on itself, and I thought that was a really good transition from a slower song to something a bit more energetic, which is our next one. Now, this next band probably doesn't need an introduction, but it's Jimmy Eat World, and the song is called What Would I Say to You Now? This is a B-side from Static Prevails, their first major full-length in 1996, 1997. It never really made the cut for the album itself, but man, this is such a good track. This song doesn't sound a lot like their other music. It's raw, unpolished, a little bit angry, and very energetic and riffy, and so yes, I really enjoy this song just for the sheer amount of energy they threw into it, which is something you often don't see from Jimmy Eat World. They're a bit more reserved. One of my favorite things to do with Jimmy Eat World is to take all of their B-side tracks and put them in a single playlist. It's about 50 songs altogether, taking songs from like various recording sessions and then their B-side compilations that they've released, and then putting them in alphabetical order and just playing it through. And somehow it really works. And so that's one of my favorite playlists. It takes about 2 hours to get through it, and I just love it. Like, it's super fun to listen to that while on a long drive. And so if you have access to those B-sides, I would definitely recommend doing that because they've got a lot of gems in there. Now, this next song is just something I stumbled upon while browsing in Bandcamp one day. It's called Salt Plus Light Plus Things Found in the Kitchen by a band called Any Two Words. These guys are one of those newer emo bands that have been popping up all over the place over the past 10 years. I tend not to be able to follow a lot of these because there's just so many bands and I mostly listen to the classics anyway. But these guys really struck me because they're very witty with their lyrics, but then also they got some pretty unique turns in terms of their musicianship and their songwriting. And so I really enjoyed this track in particular. It's also got a high amount of energy to it, mid-tempo, like the theme of this playlist, and so I thought it was a really good fit. This album just came out last year, so it's one of the newer tracks on this entire playlist. Now we're on song 9, and so it's time to wind down a little bit, so I picked a song called Lovesick Teenagers from a band called Bear in Heaven. This band was based out of New York City, and they came up around the same time as a lot of other bigger bands were getting their break. Interpol, The Strokes, and The National, all those guys came around that same time period from that same area. What I like about these guys is that they're a little bit dancey and psychedelic and very layered in their music, as you can hear with this particular track, while still being very catchy. It kind of feels like an anthem. This song still has a pretty good propulsion to it, but it is slowing down a little bit, which I think is a perfect place to put song number 9. This is one of my favorite tracks from their second album, which came out in 2009. And then finally, our last song is by a band called Joyce Manor, based out of Los Angeles, and the song is called Last You Heard of Me from their 2016 album called Cody. I would classify this band as being either a very aggressive power pop band or a little bit laid back punk rock band. They're kind of in the middle between those two, and I like this overall sound. It reminds me a lot of bands that came out in like the mid 2000s, but these guys came out a little bit after that. This is one of their slower songs, and I think it's an excellent closing track. It's a little bit self-reflecting. So the singer is just going out for a smoke, and he catches eye with somebody else, and they make eye contact. And through that moment, they kind of share their entire relationship, both the start of it and the end of it. And I just like the overall idea of just having that moment flash between their eyes just there for a second. And I don't know, nice poignant way to end a playlist. Still got a nice mid-tempo feel to it, very catchy, and I think it's in fitting with the rest of this playlist. So there we go, that's my Winter 2025 playlist. I'll have links to the playlist down below with multiple platforms. I'll also put links to each of the bands individually down below too, hopefully with their Bandcamp links if I can find them, because that will allow you to buy the album and directly support the band as opposed to streaming where they get pennies on the dollar. In a few months, I'll make another playlist for spring 2026, so be on the lookout for that as well, and subscribe if you haven't already. We'll see you next time.